questions? Don't all at once.
I can't.
Yes, sir.
I have a quick question for you. My name is Timothy Garner, and thank you for coming out to Gwinnett County. I appreciate you coming out here. Governor Deal has done a really good job bringing the film industry into Georgia. I think that's brought a lot of jobs and a lot of opportunity for people. How do you feel about keeping the film industry here? What will you do to keep it here?
Thank you. So I actually was one of the co-sponsors of the original tax credit. I served on the Ways and Means Committee when the tax credit was first introduced. And I remember having the conversation in Ways and Means about whether we should have the tax credit. And actually some folks didn't want it. And I was one of the folks on the committee who said, look, I think this is important for Georgia. That tax credit has been transformative for our economy. It has changed the way we do business here. Because not only did we have a tax credit that was successful, a lot of other states eliminated their tax credit. Michigan, North Carolina, Louisiana, Florida. And by eliminating that tax credit, it boosted our ability to use it. But here's the thing, our tax credit is not about bringing films to Georgia. We call it a film credit, but that's not the point, because we don't give them enough money to actually do a single film. What we do is create a reason for them to come here so we can create all the industries around the film industry, so that we can make permanent those temporary jobs. That's what I appreciate, and that's what I will continue to support. But we have not done a good job of diversifying who has access to those jobs. We do not invest in those small businesses that need to create the craft industry, that need the opportunity to create a studio. The ones across the state who want to bring those films to where they are, but they don't have the ability to finance the construction cost. Part of what I want to do with economic development is make certain that we use the film industry to grow capacity in every community, use it as micro development, and that we diversify who actually has access to these jobs. Because Georgia has the capacity to become the next Hollywood, not just compared to New York, but to basically be Hollywood. We have every vista that you need, and we have the capacity, but we have to be willing to put the money and the energy into expanding who actually benefits from the film industry in Georgia.
Thank you.
Next, governor's going to have to deal with two kind of big issues: medical marijuana and casinos. What are your views on those two topics?
Good night. So he asked about medical marijuana and casinos. On medical marijuana, I agree that we should allow cannabis oil to be accessible to everyone, because here's the challenge. Legislators should not be making medical decisions. And one of the reasons for the opioid epidemic is that it's a pain management tool that runs amok. Cannabis oil is a non-addictive way to provide that type of chronic pain treatment, and we should allow it. We have to fight every year to add a disease, to make sure that the diseases that people have are actually covered, and it becomes too much of a battle. We need to acknowledge that cannabis oil should be allowed, and then we have to make sure it's actually produced in Georgia. Because right now, what most people don't realize is even though we have a law that says you can have it, you have to go to Colorado to get it. That's right. And that means you have to be able to afford to leave the state, afford to go to Colorado, afford to get back, and hope that you're not the wrong color when you come back with your cannabis oil. Because even though it's legal, they're not going to treat it as legal the minute you get back here possibly. So we have to expand opportunity and make certain that we actually start to grow here at home. Number two, and the other corollary I put on that is that that's also an opportunity for us to engage a lot of our universities, especially our land-grant institutions, in the growing of cannabis oil, because it will be a very profitable product. And we have to, again, make certain that it is not constrained to one group, the privilege to make money off of it while everyone else suffers if they get access. When it comes to casinos, here is where I stand. I'm from Gulfport, Mississippi. I remember before casinos, I remember after. Mississippi has a lot of casinos now. They bring social unrest and social pathologies because not everyone knows how to gamble and stop. But I also understand that there's an economic development capacity and that people are going to gamble. So I'm not opposed to casinos. I actually think that we should put it on the ballot. But every year in the legislature that this has been under discussion, I've refused to let the bill move, and Democrats have been the reason it stopped. Republicans like to take credit for it, but they can't get the votes in the House because, as leader, I've stopped them from ever having enough votes in the House because they have to get all 62 members of the Democratic caucus to sign on, and we've refused. Because until they agree to spend at least a third of the money on need-based aid for college, not the traditional Hope Scholarship where you have to have a B, but real need-based aid, that should not get to bring casinos to Georgia. But if we can get that done, then I'm open to the conversation. Yes, sir.
I really enjoyed what you just said. My name is Lorenzo Cooper, and I'm an immigrant from Panama. I've been in Georgia for 21 years, and I was just sharing with the young lady here. I'm not sure you know Charles Cook, but I was his first immigration case here when he became an attorney. What you said about what your family thought is the same thing that my family thought. First church, education, and then helping others. I have two kids. One that is very bright. Right now he's on a full scholarship at UGA. And I have another kid, a daughter. She is also very bright, but she's not an A+ student. She is a C student. How will you make that Hope Scholarship available to those students that are C?
And I think it's important to talk about Hope very briefly. My opponent, the person not in the room, she has made Hope the center of her campaign, and she's made a decision in 2011, the marker. And let's understand what happened in 2011. In 2011, the Hope Scholarship was on the brink of bankruptcy. Nobody denies that. Because what we did was we took the cap off of who could have it, but we also allowed college tuitions to skyrocket. So every time tuition went up, we paid more off the scholarship, we paid more money, but we didn't increase the number of people who were buying lottery tickets. And so you basically had low income, middle and low income people financing higher education in Georgia. And the problem was in a recession, there were few people there to buy those tickets. So everyone agreed that the program was in trouble. When Nathan Deal was elected in 2010, he was elected and he swept out every Democrat in statewide office. We lost members in the House and the Senate became a super minority. So the House was the only chamber that actually had enough votes. But we still only had 68 votes out of 180. So Republicans needed 91 votes to pass something in the House. They had 112 to pick from. The other challenge was that if you think about the Hope Scholarship, everyone likes to lionize it, and I think it's an extraordinary program. But if you are, in 2010, if you went to UGA or Georgia Tech, you kept the Hope Scholarship 70% of the time. If you went to any other college, your likelihood of keeping the Hope Scholarship dropped to 30%. So most families who got Hope didn't keep Hope. So when they started talking about what they wanted to do with the Hope Scholarship, the governor and the Republicans said, we're going to make it even harder to get it. We're going to put an SAT or ACT requirement on the Hope Scholarship. That would have meant that if you go to any school other than UGA or Georgia State or UGA or Georgia Tech, good luck. If you went to a black college, a historically black college or a regional college, you were never going to see the Hope Scholarship. If you were a student of color, or if you were a low-income student, your likelihood of getting that scholarship would plummet dramatically. They also said we're going to strip money from pre-K to pay for what we want to do. And they were going to gut technical colleges. I traveled the state for a month. I had hearings at the Capitol. And what I heard over and over again is we don't just need the Hope Scholarship. We need a loan program for the kids who lose hope or who can't make up the difference in fees anymore. What we need is technical college money because all these families were starting to send their adults back to technical college and they couldn't get in because they couldn't afford remedial courses. Because how many of you remember algebra? Exactly. Well, if you couldn't understand algebra, you weren't going to get the Hope grant. And I don't know of a 4-year-old who gets a do-over year. And if we'd eliminated pre-K or cut pre-K, those 4-year-olds would have been denied access, plus their parents would have had to come pick them up from pre-K 3 times a week in the middle of the day. And how many of you work at jobs where you can just take off in the middle of the day 3 times a week for the next year without any trouble? That's what was at stake. My colleague in the legislature, who was brand new, thought that we should just plant our flag on the ground and say no and just force them to do our will. I'd been there with my first year in the legislature, second year. I had to fight to stop them from making English the official language of Georgia so they could stop sending notices home from school in any other language. My second year, I had to stop them from passing a bill that would have allowed you to put a man to death with 9 votes because they thought 12 was too many. You don't play chicken with somebody who doesn't mind if they crash the car with your children in the front seat. And so I made a deal with the governor to make sure they created a tiered program. They got what they wanted at the top, but they were going to give at least 80 to 90% of the Hope Scholarship to every other student who still met the standards. That's the deal we got. Plus I got remedial courses put back in for technical college. I saved pre-K, a full day of pre-K, and got a $30 million low interest loan program put in place. That's what we did in 2010, or 2011. But in 2013, I went to the person who opposed me, to Stacey Evans, and said, I want you to carry this legislation because you are so excited about saving hope. I want you to help me get this done. We need to save technical colleges. And so I asked her to carry that legislation, and she's done an extraordinary job, and I don't want to take that away from her. But this was not a one-sided idea. This was me coming back saying, we have to do this piece by piece. So the second piece was restoring the GPA and actually adding money back for technical colleges. But to your point, here's the thing. It's still not enough. Because from the beginning of Hope in 1993, the Hope Scholarship required a B average. We should not have to have a B in Georgia to be successful. I have a C student brother. He deserved to have access to the Hope Scholarship, but he didn't, which is why I believe in need-based aid. I believe that we have to create Hope 2, which provides access to need-based aid for anyone who cannot afford to go to college. And right now, that's pretty much everybody who hasn't won the lottery lately. That's the responsibility that we have. And I will make it my mission to make sure college is affordable for every student, regardless of their GPA.
Hi, Stacey. I'm Veronica Cope. I've known you for some time. I'm actually a criminal defense attorney here in Gwinnett County and also a candidate for a Superior Court judge. I have a question for you with regard to the privatization of our prison system, our prisons, and also specifically the privatization of our immigration holding facilities, being that Gwinnett County is a 287G county. What is your position on that privatization?
I oppose it strongly, would rescind it, and would make it unlawful in the state of Georgia if I could. I don't think the legislature would agree with me, so I would use every executive power that I have to disincentivize participation in 287G. I would make certain that we cease to operate. So there are two things. One is that you can look at the contracts we have, and while you cannot necessarily vitiate those contracts, you can change the terms and you can enforce them. And we can make certain that our prisons, private and public, are actually run in a humane way. Because part of the challenge we have in Georgia is that we lock people up and we forget them until they're put back on the streets. That's the wrong thing to do, whether it's an immigration case or a criminal case. And so I believe that we have to be focused like a laser on humane treatment, but also disassociating ourselves. And I would not renew a single private contract in the state of Georgia if we can. Because the reality is we have to start thinking about the longitudinal needs of our communities. And that means that we have to think about immigration, not just as a national issue, but as a state issue. I fought hard against HB 87. I disagree with how we have imposed E-Verify. I disagree with the fact that we have criminalized poverty and criminalized being an immigrant by saying that if you don't look right, we can stop you using traffic stops. I think that it is an abomination that as a state that has been built on diversity, that we have now turned that diversity into a weapon against ourselves. And so what I would do is work very closely. Charles Cook is actually supporting my campaign. I would work closely with everyone who has this idea and who understands it to make sure that we become the most humane state in the nation and that we do not privatize the ill treatment of people in the state of Georgia.
We'll probably have time for one or two more questions.
Oh, so I never understood as a citizen, why is it that driving with suspended license is connected to jail?
Because Georgia criminalizes traffic offenses. So we're one of, I think it's like 15 states. If anyone in here is from PolitiFact, please. I could be wrong about that number. But there are a number of states, usually southern states, that turn traffic offenses into criminal offenses. And because we criminalize those offenses, you don't just get to pay a citation. It actually becomes, it's a pretext for you going to jail. And we use it, it's called criminalizing poverty. We use it because if you have a traffic offense, usually you can't solve it because you don't have the money. And because you don't have the money, we can then put you on probation. Because in Georgia, a lot of probation is private. You then end up paying $2,000 for a $150 ticket. So we've commoditized people's freedom in ways that make no sense. Which is why not only do I believe in criminal justice reform on reentry, I believe in decriminalizing poverty, meaning we will no longer, I want us to stop making traffic offenses criminal acts, but we also need to reform our bail system because you should not have to have property to have freedoms in the United States. And we have to think about all of these pieces because the other challenge is that our counties are financed through this. And as a Superior Court judge, when you win, what you will discover is that Georgia has a litany of fees that we attach to every mistake you make. Because the state has started about 20 years ago defunding its responsibilities for counties. And I'm getting the weeds for 1 second, I promise I'm going to come out. The state of Georgia counties are constitutional creations, which means the state is responsible for certain funding mechanisms. Well, we gave these counties mandates, including criminal justice, but we keep taking money away from what we're willing to put in, but they still have to administer justice. So if we don't put in our part, they're going to make up their part, and the way we've allowed them to make up their part is by tacking on fees to everything, especially tacking on fees to low-level criminal charges, because we know that as long as you have a job, you're going to keep paying those fees because you don't want to go on probation. You want to get off of probation. You don't want to go to jail. So we will suck you dry for 2 years because you didn't know your tail light was out, or you knew it was out, but you had to wait for payday to pay it off. And that's the problem. Last question.
Oh yeah. So my name is Marco. I grew up along Beaver Highway, and like Clarkson, it has a high immigrant and refugee population. I guess my question's on immigration, which I feel like affects a lot of us here directly and indirectly. I guess I just want to hear your opinion on the non-detainer policy. Like, I guess, I do realize this is, it's a citywide, I guess it's each individual city decides on their own, but like, would you, I guess, I just want to hear your opinion on like a non-detainer policy.
Sure. And I'll wrap it into a lot of things. One, being undocumented in Georgia should not be a criminal offense. That means we should not be participating in the absurd and vile activity of the national government to round people up. That makes no sense, and no state worth its salt should be participating. You probably heard earlier this week, Casey Cagle sent a threatening letter to the city of Decatur because they have a non-detainment policy. Unless there's a valid warrant, they will not participate. That should be the baseline premise of every community in Georgia. That should not be the top standard, it should be the basic standard. And I believe it. And I agree with the city of Decatur that Casey is off his rocker on this one. Plus, he's just trying to stoke fear and use immigration as a way to boost his credibility, and that's his prerogative. I don't agree. But I also think that we have to do a better job of actually supporting those undocumented families in our communities, because they typically live in mixed documentation families. Someone's a citizen, someone's got a green card, someone's naturalized, and someone's undocumented. That includes our DACA students. Those students should have the right to attend every college in the state of Georgia at the same rate as anyone who graduated from one of our high schools. And that means you should be able to go to our flagship universities, and you should be able to qualify for the Hope Scholarship. So I know this is a little far afield from where you are, but I want you to understand my principle. And my principle is, immigration is a federal issue. The state should not be involved in turning immigration into a weapon against its people at any level for any reason. I think that the issue of criminality is something that's different. If you can demonstrate to me that someone has committed an actual crime, then that person should be treated by the justice system the same way we treat anyone who commits the same crime. But being undocumented in Georgia should not be a crime.
Thank you so much. One more thing that I just want to add in terms of why this governor's election for me is so important and so critical for us here in the state of Georgia is 2020 is the census. And we all probably here have similar feelings about what's going on with our current administration, which means the census is always undercounting, particularly communities of color, and this come 2020 is probably going to be far worse. And so why that's important for me is because redistricting happens for all the districts here in the state and also for congressional level. And the reality is, being in the State House and come 2018 and come 2020, despite the fact that we have a lot of great folks running in different areas, the reality is that we're likely going to continue being a predominantly Republican legislature. And it is the General Assembly that rewrites these maps. And so we would have veto power. Hence why it's so critical to have Leader Abrams to be our governor here in the state of Georgia. If nothing else, for me, that is one of the most critical things that we have to remember about why we have to all engage in this governor's race. So I want to have that one last question. Leader Abrams, if you'd let us know what we can do to make sure that you actually are at Paces Ferry, and this time no one's going to ask you whether you belong or not.
Thank you. I'm glad you asked. So first and foremost, please sign up to the table. We need to know who you are because we need supporters everywhere. Our campaign, and please raise your hand if you're with the Abrams campaign. You can see we have volunteers, we have staff, we have interns, and the reason we have so many people is that we're not waiting till 2018 to win this race. We are everywhere. We have people in we've identified someone in every single county already. We've already contacted tens of thousands of voters, especially voters who are usually undercounted and ignored or not contacted until 2 weeks before the election. If you're black, they go to your church thinking that all black people go to the same 5 churches. And if you are Latino, they send you the same Spanglish ad that is poorly written in any language, hoping that you'll use it and buy it and vote. We are on the ground today because, and by the way, then we completely ignore Asia Pacific Islander families altogether because we assume they're Republicans. That's wrong. Our policy and the Abrams campaign is that we're building a multiracial, multi-ethnic coalition in every county. Because we win this race by turning out those voters that have been left out and left behind, and that we believe that you should have an equal investment in every vote, not prioritize certain votes based on the color of the voter. We have to treat everyone the same, and that means getting out there early and making sure everyone votes. So that's going to take 3 things. 1, it takes money. We need support, because these folks aren't working for free. Some of them are, but most of them aren't. And they like being paid every 2 weeks for some reason. I don't know. So investment in our campaign is not investment in a television commercial. It's investment in field. We are on the ground around the state. I've already held more than 20 events with more than 1,500 people turning out for those events. We are going to continue to do that work, but we need your support. And give as much as you can, give till it almost hurts, because I don't want you to get tired too quickly. But we do need everyone's investment. Secondly, we need your help with volunteering. We run phone banks every single week. We are canvassing around the state. If you want to come and door knock, come and door knock. If you want to make phone calls, you can do it from the comfort of your home, or you can come into the office and have fun with everybody. But we need your help with volunteering so we can get out there and touch people. And third, we need visibility. I want everyone to be talking about this race the way they talked about John Ossoff. I doubt I'm going to get $30 million for it, but we can try. But raising visibility is important because you may have noticed I don't look like everyone else running. I'm very tall. I mean, there's a question of viability. People wonder, can this happen? Will Georgia make the decision to elect a woman of color, a black woman, to be the first woman governor, and certainly to be a Democratic governor in Georgia? And I think the answer is yes, if we are willing to do the work, because we have the numbers. We leave about 1 million votes on the table because we don't ask, because we discount those voters because of where they live or what they look like. I want to be the governor for all of Georgia, and you prove that by doing the work early, and I need your help making me visible. On Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on emails that you're sending to friends saying, I just heard this woman talking, unless you didn't like me, in which case keep it to yourself. But if you like me, tell folks about it. And talk about this campaign. On Instagram, on Snapchat. I'm talking now about things I don't really understand, but I know they exist. But most of all, it's making certain that you are visibly supportive of my campaign. Because the more people believe the more they see. So if they see that people are with me, they'll believe that they can be with me too. And this is really not about whether the math is there, it's about whether we have faith in ourselves that we can have what we deserve. And we can have what we want. And I think we can if we stand together. So, money, visibility, volunteering. And now I will vacate. Thank you so much.